Iceland is on fire, with earthquake swarms, volcanic eruptions, and lava fountains spewing hundreds of meters into the air. This tiny country is experiencing volcanic activity on a staggering scale. And it isn't the first time Iceland has seen this kind of volcanism too. And it certainly won't be the last. This is the awakening of a 1,000-year cycle. A rhythm that last transformed the landscape when Vikings walked these shores. And this is no blip on the radar. It's a geological marathon. The activity we're seeing today could last for 200 to 400 years. But this time will be different. This isn't the Viking era. Today, Iceland is a modern nation of geologists and engineers who aren't going to take this lava invasion lying down. As the ground tears apart beneath their feet, they are attempting the impossible, to out-engineer a continent pulling itself in two. So, can a modern society survive 4 centuries of fiery chaos? We're gonna find out. I'm James Stewart and you're watching Astrum Earth. Join me as we explore the youngest land on the planet, delving into the ancient cycles, responsible for carving out this mythical anomaly of fire and ice, geological patterns that have left Iceland facing the ultimate test: survival. Iceland is unique. Not only is fermented shark considered a delicacy, but geologically there's nowhere else like it. It sits astride the mid-Atlantic ridge, a divergent boundary where the North American and Eurasian plates pull apart at a rate of around 2 centimeters a year. That's roughly, by the way, the speed your fingernails grow. As the plates separate, magma rises to fill the gap, cools into basalt, and forms new crust. And I know what you're thinking. There's nothing particularly unusual about that. But over millions of years, this process has built the longest mountain range on Earth, running down the center of the Atlantic Ocean. Almost all 16,000 kilometers lies 2-3 kilometers beneath the waves. That is, until you reach Iceland. Here, land pokes its head above the surface. Why? Well, Iceland isn't just on a tectonic plate boundary. Here, the mid-Atlantic ridge intersects another geological phenomenon, a mantle hotspot. These are best known for creating island chains such as Hawaii, the Galapagos, and the Canary Islands, all of which, I might add, lie in the middle of tectonic plates, not at the edge. The hotspot under Iceland instead creates the geological equivalent of a pressure cooker left on high for millions of years, turning an already active boundary into something far more volatile, producing a third of all the lava that's erupted onto Earth's surface in the last 500 years. Which is not bad for a country smaller than England. Now, mantle hotspots are somewhat of an enigma, which is sort of a nice way of saying that scientists don't exactly know what causes them. And actually let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see a video on that another time. But for now, what we need to know is that they are driven by columns of unusually hot, buoyant rock rising from deep within the Earth and pushing up through the mantle, and that they can last for tens of millions of years. Now, the important thing to note here is that these hotspots can raise mantle temperatures by as much as 200 degrees Celsius, and in doing so the drop in pressure causes hot, solid rock to melt into magma. The result is an unusually thick crust, up to 40 kilometers compared to typically 7 kilometers, and enough buoyancy to lift the ridge out of the ocean. It voila, an island, or, in this case, an Iceland. This is the only inhabited mid-ocean ridge on Earth. In fact, visit Seismic National Park, and you can literally stand in the separation zone between 2 continents. But it's what's inside that ridge that's problematic. We often talk about tectonics in the past tense, but in this case, the problem is present. Very present. Iceland's unique geology. Iceland is a mere teenager in geological terms. The oldest rocks, found in the West Fjords and the Eastern Fjords, are just 16 to 18 million years old, which is basically yesterday compared to continental Europe's half-billion-year-old crusts. And if you thought that was impressive, well, wait for this. When you move south, the land gets even younger still. It is only 3-7 million years old in places, like the Reykjanes Peninsula. Now, just off the south coast is the youngest land on the planet. In the 1960s, the island of Surtsey erupted into existence from beneath the sea. This island is a pristine natural laboratory, allowing scientists a rare chance to study an island, from birth, really. Because it began as sterile lava, with a known birthday, if you'd like, and has remained free of human interference thanks to strict protections. Researchers can trace exactly how life builds an ecosystem, step by step, giving us an insight into processes analogous to the spreading of life on early Earth. But Iceland's youth isn't only interesting for the sake of scientific research. And this video, it's dangerous. Because young land means fresh lava and lots of it. There are around 30 volcanic systems active across the island, and over 100 volcanoes have erupted in the last 10,000 years. I say, around 30 because nature doesn't draw neat boundaries. It would be very helpful if it did. Some systems here have obvious central volcanoes, others are long networks of underground fissures, and many are a combination of both, slipping in and out of activity over centuries. So, depending on the geological criteria used to define active, the number sits somewhere between 28 and 33. And thanks to lying on such a rare tectonic sweet spot, Iceland produces almost every major style of volcanic behavior on the planet, from flood basalts that spread lava in vast sheets, gently built shield volcanoes, ground splitting fissure eruptions, explosive composite volcanoes, sticky rhyolite domes, and even huge ash flow calderas. Nowhere else puts this entire volcanic toolkit on display quite like Iceland. In fact, the country's image as a land of fire has become central to its identity and its economy. But it also hides a hard geographical reality. For all its beauty, the interior of the country is a vast, high, freezing desert, often compared to the surface of the moon. Its harsh conditions leave it largely uninhabited. Instead, nearly everyone lives around the coast, especially the south-west corner. The Gulf Stream keeps this part of the country relatively balmy. Winter temperatures rarely drop below 5 degrees Celsius, leaving harbors ice-free year-round. Combine that with rich cod-stocked seas, and why wouldn't you want to stay here? Over time, small settlements grew into towns and cities, pulling in even more people. I really can't state enough that this area is the nerve center of the nation. 80% of the population lives within an hour's drive of Reykjavik. Icelanders have cleverly leveraged the country's geological activity here to their advantage too. Over 85% of homes are heated by geothermal water, underpinning Iceland's position as a green energy leader. High-temperature geothermal fields, where hot water and steam circulate above shallow magma bodies, are tapped by boreholes. Housing, swimming pools, and even pavements are warmed by the earth itself. Imagine that, underfloor heating while you walk to the shops! That's my kind of luxury. But with this growth comes new vulnerabilities. More people means more infrastructure now sits in places that will be affected by future eruptions. And by future, I don't mean in hundreds of years. I mean as soon as tomorrow, because something even more sinister is brewing below the surface. In late 2019, something changed. Earthquakes, seismic swarms, shook the ground beneath Fagradalsfjall, an area less than an hour's drive from Reykjavik. And I'm sorry for my pronunciation here, Icelanders, let me know how I get on. They started small but soon multiplied and strengthened. By early 2021, more than 40,000 earthquakes shook the region in a matter of weeks, in what's known as seismic swarms. Terrifying, absolutely. But also a geological warning something was going on just a few kilometers below the surface. Seismic swarms can be caused by magma forcing its way up through cracks in Earth's crust, in what's known as an intrusion. Rock fractures, magma floods in, pressure builds, and it's often only a matter of time until it reaches the surface. In March 2021, the ground finally gave way, and a fissure ripped open in Fagradalsfjall. A surreal, glowing curtain of lava, 180 meters long, fountained into the air before flowing into a sheltered valley. It was the first eruption on the Reykjanes Peninsula in 8 centuries. I said I'd come back to this place, and it went on for nearly 6 months, before suddenly stopping. But that was not a return to dormancy. That was just the start. Further eruptions followed in 2022 and again in 2023. Then the activity began to migrate, shifting a few kilometers southwest to Surtsey, along the Sundan Kaskigar crater row. It was closing in fast. On 10th of November 2023, the decision was taken to evacuate the town of Grindavík, home to 700 people. The telltale seismic swarms showed that a major magma intrusion was propagating beneath the town. Days after the evacuation, fissures opened, destroying homes and damaging infrastructure. It was described as Iceland's most severe the Reykjanes Fires cycle, disaster in 51 years. And Grindavík remains largely uninhabited today. For geologists, this was the final confirmation needed that a long, quiet, volcanic system had awoken, the starting pistol for a centuries-long eruptive cycle. But how did they know this is only the beginning? By bringing Viking sagas into the satellite age. This, my friends, has happened before. When you think of what Icelanders have to deal with on a daily basis, actual lava, it makes me realize I have got it pretty easy. Here in my very boring village in the UK. And I've got a bit complacent over the years. Truth be told, I mean there's literally a pub and a pond here. That's it! My biggest worry right now is why did I throw my Pokemon cards away in 1998 and all that nonchalantness has given strangers a free ticket into my house without me realizing. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. We do everything we can to protect our families physically, don't we? We buy life insurance. We lock the doors at night. We install security cameras. I mean, I've got about 7 of those things. Here, I'm an Alfred away from a Bruce Wayne-style surveillance operation. But the biggest vulnerability might be the digital map leading to the motherlode inside the house, my data! That's why I'm using Deletimi. It proactively removes my home address, phone number, and family details from the internet. So don't wait for a scare to happen. Be proactive. Remove the digital breadcrumbs that lead the bad guys to your front door. Why not treat yourself to a digital detox this year and join Deletimi? You can get 20% off with my link Join Deletimi. Comdastrumirth and use code OSTERMOMPART-H at checkout. Thanks to Deletimi for sponsoring this video. The link is in the description. If you want your digital life a bit more private. As we head back to the video, the Norse Vikings first settled in Iceland in 8074 AD and lucky for us in this instance, were impeccable record keepers. Their annals and sagas describe fire coming out of the sea and darkness during daytime in the Reykjanes area between 1210 and 1240. During this period, now often referred to as the Reykjanes Fires, the peninsula was gripped by repeated fissure eruptions. Widespread environmental destruction led to devastating effects on livestock and farming, pushing the medieval communities here to the very edge of survival. 8 centuries later, what was once recorded as folklore had become a critical guide for modern science and potentially survival. Beneath soil and lake sediment in volcanic regions are layers of volcanic ash. When analyzed, these tiny shards of essentially glass carry a chemical fingerprint with a precise mix of silica, iron, magnesium, calcium, and sodium. Now, crucially, these fingerprints vary from one volcanic system to the next. When paired with radiocarbon dating of the sediments above and below the ash layers, as well as observations from old lava flows, the timing and sequence of historical eruptions can be pieced back together. In March 2020, Kristján Edmundsson from the Iceland Geosurvey and his colleagues published evidence of at least 3 major rifting and eruptive episodes over the last 4,000 years, each lasting a few hundred years and spaced roughly 801,000 years apart. Now, to be honest, this would have been quite good to know before Iceland set up the majority of its economy, infrastructure, and housing in this area. But even so, what on earth was causing them? The timing of these cycles comes back to that uniquely Icelandic geological boiling pot that I mentioned at the start. Yes, Iceland as a nation sits on the mid-Atlantic ridge, but the Reykjanes Peninsula in particular sits directly astride it. There is no single centralized volcano here. The plate boundary itself is the volcano. As the North American and Eurasian plates slowly pull apart, lateral strain builds within the crust. It stretches and, over time, fractures. This creates underground networks of fissures that are invisible to us at the surface. As magma rises from below, it intrudes into any nook and cranny it can find. At first it stalls at depth, not erupting but building pressure. For centuries, this process unfolds quietly, steadily, relentlessly. The apparent calm above ground is deceptive. Eventually the combined force of plate motion and magma pressure just becomes too much and the crust gives way. Existing fractures are forced open, new ones tear through rock, and magma surges sideways for kilometers at a time through networks of thin underground dikes, triggering the seismic swarms that signal what comes next. When those intrusions finally break the surface, long fissures open, and eruptions ignite along the rift. Each eruption releases some of the accumulated stress, and the rift switches on and off over decades until centuries of tension are relieved. Then the system quietens, and the cycle simply resets. And terrifyingly, the most recent seismic swarms and eruptions fit the expected cycles uncannily well. This activity is right on schedule. But when this cycle last played out, it was medieval communities who were pushed to the brink, predicting eruptions. What can modern Icelanders really do in the face of a cycle that cannot be stopped? Well, they're going head to head with the lava, obviously! Modern GPS and interferometric synthetic aperture radar from satellites show that before eruptions, the land inflates as magma accumulates. Now, in 2021, some areas rose by tens of centimeters before subsiding again. Taken together with thousands of small earthquakes, magma pathways can be mapped in real time. This allows geophysicists to estimate the volume of magma involved, as well as the depth and shape of the reservoirs. This gave Iceland time to plan, well, as much planning as you can, when it comes to huge impending lava flows. When seismic activity first returned to the Reykjanes Peninsula, Iceland's Department of Civil Protection and Emergency Management recognized its significance. To prepare for the looming period of increased volcanism, they established the Infrastructure Protection Group, which feels like it sort of needs its own Avengers-style superhero fanfare, doesn't it? The IPG does pretty much what it says on the tin. This crack team of engineers, scientists and emergency planners work to protect people and critical infrastructure from lava. As the 2021 eruptions near Fagradalsfjall unfolded, lava eventually spilled beyond sheltered valleys and began creeping towards roads. The Department of Civil Protection made a pivotal decision. They would try and hold it back. With no recent precedent to draw from, this response became a real-time field experiment in lava flow engineering. And the first challenge was deceptively simple: where to put a barrier. And that's where engineers like Run come in. And thank you so much to her. She helped us massively in researching this video. With a background in hydrology and hydrodynamics, Run's expertise was in modeling floods and river ice, both slow and fast, moving destructive flows shaped by gravity and terrain. Yeah, those fundamental principles, it turned out, could be applied to lava by using flood simulation software originally designed by the US Navy. She was able to quickly predict, with remarkable accuracy, where molten rock was most likely to go next. Teams rushed to build the first experimental barriers using whatever they could find in situ, literally anything: mud, gravel, soil from past eruptions. Crews worked around the clock, and they were close enough to feel the burn from the encroaching lava. This is serious stuff. Now, the aim here was not to stop the lava outright, but to delay it, restrict it, and essentially buy time. These early tests showed that this approach could actually work. But they also revealed some critical lessons. Firstly, lava type matters. A lot of lava is chunky and rough. When this hit a barrier, it thickened and piled up, like geological porridge. If you want to stop it, your walls need to be built like a medieval fortress. Piahoeho lava, on the other hand, is smooth and much runnier, behaving more like honey, if we're doing the breakfast metaphor thing. Interestingly, drone surveys showed that it flowed over dams but could be redirected using angled berms. And it was this piece of information that immediately suggested that a barrier doesn't have to stop lava flow. It just needs to guide it. Defending against lava. These initial field trials made up as they were going along led to the most ambitious lava defense project ever attempted. And as volcanic activity shifted further west closer to towns, the lessons became more critical. Multi-kilometer barriers up to 24 meters high have now been built across the Reykjanes Peninsula. Such is the scale of them that 2 new quarries have been opened to provide enough material. The new barriers are built with compacted basalt gravel to resist heat and pressure, and they are armored with boulders and stabilized to prevent erosion and collapse. They're carefully shaped too, based on lava modeling to steer lava away from towns, key roads, and crucially, the Surtsey geothermal power station. Of course, there are gaps in these barriers too: strategic openings for roads, precast concrete, bridges for pipelines, and emergency access. But each one also comes with pre-positioned earthworks in place so they can be sealed within hours if necessary. And trust me, it's been necessary. Behind the scenes, the IPG works in constant coordination with the Department of Civil Protection and Emergency Management and universities. For engineers like Run, being on call is the new normal. As seismic swarms propagate, she can have as little as 15 minutes warning before lava reaches the surface. In that time, she has to rush to her office to be there to receive the first data, which she uses to model the flow, and then she has to tell the team on the ground which gaps to close off. After the immediate threat is over, so follows more modeling, more barriers, and more refinement. And so on, again and again and again. But the good news is so far, these models have been incredibly accurate. Each time Ron and her team have built new barriers, or increased the height of current ones, they've very quickly been needed. But that job does come with tough decisions. They can't save everything. In late 2024, lava overran the car park of the famous Blue Lagoon Spa. This wasn't a failure of defenses, but a reminder of priorities. Newly installed barriers were designed to protect the power station and the spa buildings. And the car parks. Well, those were sacrificed, or IP cars. For Grindavík, however, the limits are laid bare. No barrier on Earth can protect a town from fissures that open directly beneath the streets. Beyond this system of physical defenses, scientists and authorities are looking at how else they can prepare for a circa 200-year eruptive period. Plans include everything from relocating electricity masts and burying pipelines deeper within bedrock. Major road networks are being redesigned to allow for rapid rerouting, and AI is being drafted in to further improve forecasting. Civil protection agencies around the world are closely watching this all unfold. This is the first time a modern nation has tried to engineer its way through an ongoing volcanic crisis. If it works, this will become the blueprint for a new form of geological, urban defense. One that fights against the slow, relentless forces of Earth itself. Iceland truly is the ultimate land of fire. And it's as captivating as it is deadly, and that really isn't likely to change anytime soon. As the latest cycle of the Reykjanes Fires takes hold, Iceland will once again brace itself, and the world will watch the latest round of humans vs. nature. Whatever the outcome this time around, the feeling is at some point, something will have to give, and for the sake of the people of Iceland and beyond, all we can do is hope it's not them.